Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics Podcast. I'm your host, Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel. This episode is brought to you by PCBWay. More about that a little bit later on, because right now I've got a very special guest. I've got Alan, who, if you have seen his stuff, usually goes by Officer Granite. How's it going, Alan?
Going pretty good.
So I just found out what you do through a Reddit post. And then that's when I reached out to get you onto here. But for those that don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yes, I'm a Pokemon cosplayer, but what I've found success in recently that people seem to enjoy are the life-size Pokemon animatronics I've been making.
Yeah, and that's underselling it. So for my audience, maybe there's not a lot of crossover with Pokemon. I grew up, not my first Game Boy game, I should say, but my second Game Boy game was Pokemon Blue. So I grew up right in the range that I played the crap out of my Game Boy for a long time. And essentially, what you've done here is you have taken so far just from the original 150, as far as I can tell, and you've made a couple of these Pokemon come to life. Like, they really do seem like they would be in the game. Can you tell us a little bit about your motivation? Why Pokemon?
So, I was born in 1992, so I was a child, about 8 years old when that hit, and it's just like a core memory. You know, you get to be a certain age, you start looking back at the stuff you liked as a kid, and it's just always been in my head. Just piddling around the workshop like I do, I just got curious one day, and here we are.
So a lot of my audience can probably look back to like Commodores or Amigas, and those are kind of like their core memories. What was your Game Boy of choice, and what was your Pokemon version of choice when you were young?
So I want to say it was Christmas 1998 or 1999. My grandparents got me the special edition Pikachu yellow version Game Boy.
Oh, look at you go.
I started with the yellow version.
That is fancy. Those Game Boys now are worth quite a bit because they're quite rare.
I know, for my birthday this year I found one.
And how much did that set you back, if you don't mind me asking?
Like $160, but it came with the game.
That's pretty good. So I started on Pokemon Blue, like I was saying, but my wife was born the same year as me, 88. She started on Pokemon Yellow. So pretty much, all around the same era, we all started playing Pokemon, it seems.
Oh, yeah.
So from there, did you go on to the more modern systems, or was it kind of like Yellow and done for you?
So, like a lot of people in that generation, I fell off after the second generation. I just couldn't get into the third generation at all.
And then at what point did you come back to it?
I want to say when I was DS, and I want to say that it was Heart Gold had come out, and so I started playing that and really got back into it.
Okay. I've kind of been dipping my toes in newer generations once, now and again, using emulators, with totally legal copies, that I've dumped myself onto my computer. But I've never gotten another handheld. I've kept wanting to buy like a 3DS, which for those listening at home is like a flip up screen handheld that does optical 3D, like glasses free 3D, to play some of, I think it was 6th generation at that point, but I never got around to it. So, yeah, I think we're kind of like on the same page here about like, losing interest when we're younger, than picking it back up when we're a little bit older.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it had to do with it was easy to remember. By the second generation, it was 250. I think they're closing in at like 1,000 now. It's just hard to keep up.
So my big disappointment on the recent games, and I haven't played them yet, but you can't get all of the Pokemon. You can only get, a select amount from each generation, which kind of upsets me, because what if your favorite is just not included, right?
Yeah, there's there's 150, 151 in the first generation, and Nintendo really likes to focus on about 40 of them.
Yeah, and then the rest are what? Chopped liver, pretty much.
And forgotten.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. So, what was your first Pokemon cosplay, you would say?
So I basically last March or April, I had I came up with a cosplay based around a Velcro patch that I found online. It was for a Viridian park ranger. And
Just
so
just so those people can follow at home, Viridian Forest is the first quote unquote like dungeon, first like special map you encounter in the original 3 Pokemon games. Sorry, go on.
and basically the genesis of it was I think I was homesick with the flu and I was playing an emulator, I think, but also watching a marathon of like either Northwoods Law or Lone Star Law, the Game Warden shows. And I started thinking, you know, Pokemon trainers in canon have a trainer's license. And someone has to be there to check those licenses. And so I put together a outfit, and over the last year and a half I've slowly been modifying it, adding to it, and that's just the constant. I like making Pokemon to go with it.
And which brings us to how I discovered you. So let's start from the beginning. What was the first Pokemon you recreated to go with your outfit then?
It was a Pidgey.
Is it the feathered one we see basically
Yes.
plastered? Okay, that was your first attempt.
Well, the Halloween before, I was going to do a Pokemon themed trunk or treat. I was born in '92. I was born in '92, and one of the first movies I remember latching onto was Jurassic Park. And I remember wearing that VHS out, but on that VHS there was a behind the scenes making of featurette, and it showed how the animatronics were made, and I latched onto that.
And so, can you tell us the design process? So, first of all, Pidgey is like, geez, I had the name of. It's based on a real life bird, but it's much bigger than its real life equivalent. It's I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I think it's like it's bigger than a chickadee, but I don't remember its name. Do you know the name of the real bird that's based off of?
Not right offhand.
Let's see. I was gonna say a sparrow, but that's Spiro. Oh, it's just a pigeon. It's just a common pigeon. That's what it's supposed to be modeled after. And so, did you like go from 0 to building an animatronic version of this, like with no prior skill, or did you have some sort of 3D printing or model making experience before?
So, like I was saying a minute ago, the Halloween before, I was going to do a Pokemon themed trunk or treat. And I wanted to. My wife has a couple extra dog kennels. I wanted to do the park ranger bit, but I wanted to make like 110-volt animatronics that could plug into an inverter in the back of my truck. They didn't turn out well, but I kind of put them on a back burner, and I think 6 months later was when I attempted to start the first Pidgey.
So tell me a little bit about your process. Did you find a model for the Pidgey, or did you have to make it from scratch?
So the initial Pidgey had 3 versions. The first one, I had seen a video of a maker that made an animatronic raven, and I watched how it was put together, how the frame looked. So I modeled a similar frame, just a 2D frame to mount servos to, using Tinkercad. I printed it, but I could see that it had potential, but the idea was to make the frame and then use spray foam or something like that to sculpt the body around it. I realized that I can refine the frame and also purchase a 3D file of a and modify it to hold the frame.
And so
So I didn't have to sculpt.
Gotcha. But I mean, okay, did you have any animatronic or maybe microcontroller or servo experience before that, or is this literally learning as you go?
Multiple times over the last 10 years, I've tried to get into remote control planes, and gravity does not like me. So I have a lot of servos, batteries, and controllers laying around. So I just happened to pick a controller up one day. I don't code. I cannot code to save my life. Everything I build is servos, remote control receivers, and mechanical linkages.
Yeah, so you and I are kindred spirits in that aspect. I can't code for beans either. But I have to say, the more we're talking, the more that your animatronics are impressive, because it it sounds to me like you just had an idea for something, and then you went looking for someone who did something similar. And then just by watching their video, you essentially tried to replicate it, and then you just iterated on that until you got to something that legitimately looks incredible and works incredible. Like, I mean, obviously you can hear the servo sounds. You're not going to get away from that. But the finished product is amazing. It looks fantastic. So I really have to commend you on your skill here. I mean, I think you might be underselling it a little bit. The audience really needs to go check this thing out. It looks phenomenal.
And the coolest thing about that Pidgey is I designed the servo chassis to be modular. All of the receiver and everything is housed in a separate cylinder. The Pidgey body is just the model printed with like 5% infill with a cylinder missing in the middle. So I would take the battery wire, slide it through the body, and just sit down the cylinder. The Pidgey head is attached to the servo on top. So it just sits down in the body, and I put the body on a glove, run the wire to the glove, and there's a battery pack in the glove. I made it modular because I knew I would like to try to make more, and if I could reuse the same chassis that I've designed, even better.
This thing is insane. Like the head, can you talk to me a little bit about the head movement? Because it doesn't look like it just goes side to side. It looks like it goes like up and down too. Am I right about that?
So that chassis, there's a servo mounted in the midpoint. That is attached to a gimbal on a hinge that goes up and down. So it gives the looking up and down motion. Inside that gimbal, there's another servo that I glued in. The head's attached to that for left and right.
I'm thinking you really need to learn a little bit of coding, even if it's just through GPT, because I can imagine you doing like 6 or 7 of these, all sitting like on branches and chirping at each other. It looks so good. Like I'm beside myself that you started out, like, as far as I can tell, like last March, and you're at this point now, you have something that looks so good, and enough that I would see, something like this be showcased on like Tested with Adam Savage or something like that.
Fun fact, that's where I saw that gentleman that had the animatronic Raven.
I thought so. I wasn't 100% sure because he might have been elsewhere, but I've seen it on Tested, and I was hoping it was the same one. So that is
because
really cool.
The movement that I wanted straight out of the gate, which the version 1 didn't have, was wings. I wanted wing movement. The first iteration, when it was finished, I was happy with it. I feathered it. It had up, down, left, right head movement. Mark II, which I did after a convention earlier this year, I redesigned the body to be able to accommodate a wing mechanism. I also redesigned the head to be hollow to incorporate a beak movement, because I was walking around this convention all Saturday hearing people saying what it would be cool if it did, and the gears were turning as I was talking to them about how I can make it work.
So, Are the design files available for purchase somewhere? Like, can someone like me make my own Pidgey?
So Pidgey, because there's just so many files that I made and they're just scattered on my hard drive, uh, that's that's not really doable. But I've recently opened a Patreon, and from when I started that Patreon to now, every project that I finish, there's a tier level to get the files.
Oh, that's
So there's files for my Zubat, which is not remote control, it's just on a motor. And I just put the files this morning for Kabuto.
oh, that is great. Okay, so let's talk about the Zubat. So Pidgey, based on a pigeon. I should have seen that coming because of the name. Talk to me a little bit about Zubat. So Zubat, for those listening at home, is a blind bat essentially, and it is known throughout the Pokemon series for being the most annoying Pokemon because if you're trying to cross a cave, pretty much all the Pokemon you encounter in the wild is the Zubat. So tell us a little bit about the Zubat.
So Zubat, let me see. I want to say it was when I built Pidgey, I just let it hang out. I didn't take it to any events until February of this year. So there's a real lull in productivity. Once I went to that event and people reacted to Pidgey, it kind of gave me a second wind to start making more. So when I decide I want to build an animatronic, there's two things that I really factor in. One is how big it is, because right now I'm only running one Ender 3 printer. Pidgey was done because the whole body was one print. I didn't have to plastic weld the pieces together like the bigger stuff I've made. It could just be printed in one go. Zubat, the only real movement I figured I could get out of it was the wings. So I, from scratch, just came up with a wing mechanism that uses a rotational micro servo inside the body via a push rod to flap these wings. Now, it's not remote control. The battery is not in the Zubat. I printed two of these and built two of these, and I had it set up on an old military backpack because in the game, you find Zubats in the mountains and caves. So I built a backpack for Officer Granite that had clear acrylic tubes coming out of the top that attached to the Zubat. And I used the thinnest gauge wire that I could to snake down that tube and connect to a USB battery pack so that it would look from a distance like the Zubats were hovering over my shoulders flapping. And these Zubats ended up being half size because I didn't really want to glue them or melt them together. They're going to get a version 2 sometime soon where it's full size.
When you decide on the scale of your Pokemon, do you go by Pokedex entry or by anime? And let me explain for those at home. All of the Pokemon that you encounter in the game are categorized in this device called the Pokedex, and there's statistics on those Pokemon. However, there's a little bit of confusion because in the anime, which was, I believe the anime was there to sell games and merchandise. But anyways, the scales are a bit different. So do you have any leaning one side or the other, or are you going, just based on how you feel?
Well, they made it easy for me because apparently recently they've added extra small and small Pokemon into the stats. So theoretically, I can make it whatever size I want to. I decide how easy the Pokemon would be to walk around a convention center, and that influences the decision as well.
Gotcha.
Because I don't really have a lot of people that go to these things with me, and from experience watching other people, the bigger the thing, you're going to need handlers and people to watch the crowd, and I really don't want to have to worry about that.
So we're not going to see a life-size animatronic Onyx anytime soon then?
No, but there are some outlandish ones that I'm giving thought to.
Oh, really? Is there anything you can sort of give us a hint on, or are you keeping it close to the chest?
I'm currently brainstorming different ways to bring a Dodrio.
Oh, I think
and
that's huge, isn't it?
it's 5'11", but most of it is leg and neck.
Yeah, so Dodrio is a little bit of like an ostrich analog,
Yes,
except it
with
has
three
three
heads.
heads. Yeah, it evolves from a Doduo who has two heads. So
So what made me think of that I can pull that off is when I was taking my nieces trick or treating this past Halloween, I saw one of those optical illusion costumes where someone was riding an ostrich and the dummy legs on the side.
oh yeah,
And I was thinking that would be a way to do that, where it's a combination puppet animatronic, where it's a costume but the heads are animatronic.
ooh, that is. So I'll say that's not a costume for the faint of heart. Like I believe you can do it, but in the anime, each head had sort of like a personality. They would fight each other. So, it would be a pretty extreme cosplay to get it done correctly. And I think you got the chops for it.
Well, I've run into in a couple of the Pokemon I've built, especially Kabuto, where the legs on the opposite side of the body need to do the same thing. I was having to rotate the servos around to where they all went the way I wanted them to. So I figure by offsetting the servos, I can make them contrast with each other.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If ever you want a little bit of coding help, I'll tell you that ChatGPT would be able to whip you up a really easy script to run servos like on a pattern. It's actually the servo control is actually quite simple in code. It's literally just a pulse getting wider or thinner,
Yeah.
take more or less time. So ChatGPT is good at that. But if you did need help, picking a micro and getting code into it or whatever, feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you a hand with that. These things are amazing. So if ever you want to put your imagination to a little bit more, self-guided animatronics, I am fully down to help you with that.
And see, I considered learning coding, but what I've discovered is that by having it to a remote control, I can have the Pokemon react to what's going on around it
Yep, that's very true.
and just interact with the people that are in front of it and look different directions when something's going on in that direction. It's a lot more on the fly.
Oh, well, I'm with you 100%. I'm just saying like
Oh, yeah, you're good.
the micro can do like a keep alive animation. The
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of stuff, which is neat as well. And also what the micro will let you do is have way more channels. So if you want like 16 control points, you can control 16 things from one controller, because you can use, like, let's say the joystick, and then you can hit a button and move the joystick at the same time, and that would do something different. And then, another button in the joystick would control something else, for example.
Yeah.
But your stuff is incredible. I'm not, I'm not saying you have to do all this. I'm just saying, like, I can see how your brain works. Giving you more control would up the ante like crazy.
Oh, I've definitely looked into it.
So yeah,
It's always a possibility.
so if ever you needed help, I'm totally down to give you a hand on that, and I don't
Absolutely.
even need any credit.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to Pokemon number 3, animatronic. And actually, this is the one that you posted on Reddit, and that's where I found you. I was just browsing Reddit one day while listening to a podcast, and there you were. So you made a Kabuto, or a Kabuto, I really don't know how to pronounce it, but I don't know what the real life analog of this is. Maybe
It's a combination between horseshoe crabs and trilobites.
oh, there we go. Okay, that makes sense. So tell us a little bit about the process, because I can see a lot of different prints were glued together for this, because like even like the belly of it looks like a couple different prints.
Oh yeah. Kabuto was actually the fifth one I did.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, basically what I do is, because I don't understand coding, I also don't understand Blender. I can't get it to work to save my life. So my computer was used when I got it in 2017. It has a program on there from Windows for 3D building. And that's what I use to chop everything up and modify. So it took about 2 days of messing around in that program, figuring out how big I wanted it, what I needed to take out, how to hollow it out, and also split it down into printable pieces because I'm running a basic Ender 3, and this was not going to print in one go. It ended up taking 3.5 weeks to print all the parts.
For Kabuto.
Yes.
Oh wow, he's not that big either. So it's just because of the complexity then of the geometry.
Yeah. Like each print was about between, I'd say, 13 hours to a day.
Yeah, that is nuts. You must be printing at a really low layer height as well then.
I'm trying to do the best I can with it.
Because it looks great. So Kabuto has 4 like little legs, and you animated those. I mean, Kabuto is kind of, I mean, let's be honest, it's kind of one of the dumber Pokemon. There's not a lot going on with them, so
it's one of the forgotten ones.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So, so you essentially just animated the legs, and that works perfectly. Like it looks pretty much like it would look like in the series, but there's a little bit more of a challenge with him too, because with Pidgey you put feathers on him. I mean, he's a bird. With the Zubat, I saw you put like fuzz on him.
Yeah, I couldn't get hold of any flocking that I was trying to do, so I followed a tutorial for homemade flocking out of yarn. It ended up not sticking, but it got the point across when I needed it to.
But Kabuto seems a lot more complicated because it has a smooth finish. So did you have to do a lot of like body filler and sanding?
Well, what I did for everything was where the pieces are melted together with a soldering iron, I put drywall spackle and sanded it. But because it's a fossil Pokemon and just looking at trilobites and horseshoe crabs, there's kind of a rough texture to them. So on the upper shell, I bought this textured spray paint to put a base coat and then painted it brown. On the lower side, all of the 3D models and the game art is just solid black. I wanted it to be a little more detailed than that. So I had some of the fake leather that they sell at Dollar Tree. And so I cut 1-inch strips and layered it on the bottom like a carapace, just like a shellfish. That just broke up the smoothness of it and gave it some real character.
Just a quick interruption to talk about this episode's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay has been a long-term sponsor of the channel, and I think they're a good match for my channel because they provide quality PCBs for a reasonable price. You can get boards manufactured up to 100 mils by 100 mils for just $5, including shipping to Canada, $15 US, including shipping to USA, $12 US, which is incredibly cheap for professionally manufactured PCBs. I can personally attest to the quality of these PCBs, and so if you want a circuit immortalized forever, check out PCBWay.com with the link in the description. Now back to the conversation. See, I thought that was where you joined the pieces together, but that's purposeful. So that's brilliant. So it's like it's as if it has like the interlocking pieces,
like the bottom of a lobster.
Yeah, so it can like breathe, right? So its chest could expand and contract if it needed to, whatever, eat or whatever. That makes a lot of sense. Look at you go.
And I'm always trying to make them as real as I can. That's why I feathered Pidgey instead of just painting it. That's why when I made my Charmander, I tried to use liquid latex to make lizard-like skin.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Charmander?
So several years ago, I bought some files on Colts 3D for the 3 starters, and they came with 3 poses for each of them. Well, one of them was a sleeping Charmander. Well, I had the idea that I could use that, and the motion I could get was flicking the tail back and forth. And the electronics are accessed via a hatch in the back. So to hide the hatch, I carry the Charmander in a baby carrier on my chest. And the tail flame lights up. There's LEDs in there. And so I'll walk around with a controller in my hand, just flicking the tail back and forth like it's asleep.
That is freaking awesome. Do you have brightness control on the LEDs in the tail?
No, I fight with LEDs on every build I try to do. Kabuto's red eyes were supposed to be LEDs, and they ended up not being bright enough to see through the 3D filament. But it is what it is. You can actually see the LEDs good enough in Charmander.
Can I give you a little tip that I've learned about a simple way to control LED brightness?
Sure.
So since you're versed in RC airplanes, you've played with them before, if you get a brushed motor speed controller, it doesn't have to be a high current one,
Yeah.
and you connect the output of it to the LED, when you throttle up, the LED will get brighter, and when you throttle down, it'll get dimmer. So if you use like a 5-watt LED or something, you could have, control over it. And since your throttle typically is springy, you can flicker it with your hand, so you can make the flame look like it's flaming.
Yeah, and the LEDs that are in there are flickering LEDs.
Oh, I see. You got like a candle LED.
Well, there's about, let's see, 8 or 9 of them soldered together.
Oh, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, and I had to pack that hollow tail flame full. I've looked into using it for other functions on animatronics, like running a 5-volt water pump for like a Squirtle down the road or something.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Hooked to a RC car gas tank full of water.
Yeah, you can actually, if you have a space constraint, if you print in PETG, you can probably even make your own tank, like have your a custom shaped tank for that. Man.
And then the last animatronic I've got is Tentacool.
Okay. Tentacool. So I guess I forgot for the audience at home that may not know Pokemon like we do. Charmander is a lizard who is mostly orange and has a flame on his tail. And I think the lore is if the flame goes out, he dies. So that it's a bit dark. And Tentacool is basically like a jellyfish. And so
yeah.
Tell us about Tentacool then.
So I've figured out how to make a tentacle mechanism that attaches to a high torque servo. So inside the hollowed out body of this Tentacool, there's 2 of those servos I think I made it with just some wood circles I got at a hobby store with a hole in the middle with some surgical tubing to keep it all spaced out. And I just ran some florist wire from the top to the bottom and hooked it to the servo arm. So as it pulls and pushes, it curls and releases that tentacle.
Oh, that's brilliant. And
my one regret is I wish I had cast some silicone covers for them instead of using the closest kind of material I could find at Hobby Lobby.
It looks a little bit like a fake leather, maybe?
It is.
Okay, there we go. I'm having a hard time following because TikTok is actually horrible to look for stuff. Most of your videos are on there, and so
yeah, and that's why I've made a whole playlist for my animatronics.
Sounds good. So
it's just easy to keep them.
Yeah, keep them organized. I'm trying to find the Tentacool working. And
there should actually be a pretty recent video on there from where I took it to a trunk or treat.
Okay, let me see. So I want to kind of paint a word picture. Let's see. And again, the thumbnails on TikTok are not great either.
No,
not really a thumbnail. Plus, I was born in '88. I'm pretty much a boomer at this point. Yeah, I can't. Oh, there's a short about painting it, because I know there's been a lot of work in like making like soft robotics, like tentacle type things. So I was just curious to see what kind of motion you got out of yours. Let's
Yeah, it
see.
could have been better. In hindsight, that was actually the second one I made. I got them mixed up.
Okay. Well, to be honest,
So still learning a lot in that process at the time.
your learning stuff is a lot more advanced than a lot of people's final products. So I wouldn't feel too bad about that.
Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a link to that video.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, each one of these, it depends on how involved it is as to how long it takes. Believe it or not, that Pidgey took the first animatronic took 1 month to make,
That's it.
and that was with no knowledge whatsoever.
Like, I don't know if I'm expressing myself right here, but you've got quite the talent. Like, that is really impressive.
The Zubat took about a week to figure out.
Okay, let's see. Can I copy this? Hopefully, I'm not going to blare audio here. TikTok on desktop is not great. Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. Okay, so you got them all laid out on your car there. You have 3 Pidgeys. I see.
Only one was animatronic. The others were the prototypes.
It's still really impressive. I'm going to link this in the show notes so people can go check it out.
Of it to put in the new one.
Look at that. Yeah, I could see the tentacle. So it seems like you have a go-to receiver and radio for this. So what are you using for this?
So when I was putting Pidgey together, I had the idea. I saw a video from the Jurassic Park part of Universal Studios where they have talent down there walking around with a puppet version of a velociraptor. I thought I could do something similar and mount Pidgey to a leather glove and find the most low profile controller that I can get hold of and put it like in my pocket or something while I'm messing with it. I found what Amazon describes as a remote control boat controller. It's 6 channels, but it only has 1 thumbstick.
Okay.
And it has about 4 buttons on it. So on the new Pidgey, the head movement is all mapped to the thumbstick, and a momentary button controls the beat. So I have 6 channels to work with.
That's okay. So that's kind of what I was thinking of that a micro can help you do. So and you kind of got that already. That's pretty impressive. I do know they do make some controllers with twist as well.
Oh yeah.
And so you can twist the stick.
I see a lot of the limitations were because I knew one of my hands was not going to be able to be used.
Yeah, fair enough. I think also if you look up R2D2 creators, a lot of those guys, they have a controller that's in 2 parts. And so they put both their arms in their pockets, and then they have one on each side, and there'll be like a crowd of people following an R2D2, and someone in the crowd is controlling them, but you can't tell which one because everyone's just naturally drawn to it. So the pilot kind of disappears. So
those are the kind of people I like to talk to at conventions.
There we go.
Just talking shop. Talking to them has helped me figure out how their BB-8 unit works, and I may use that same method to build a Voltorb.
Oh, that would be incredible. Are you thinking like something? How big is a Voltorb actually? I've never internalized it.
The issue with Voltorb is it's one size, but the acrylic spheres I would have to use only come up to a certain measurement.
Oh.
So I would have to get the biggest one, which is about 2/3 to a half of the size. But like I said, they've got extra small Pokemon now and variations, so it'll work.
Just for people listening at home, a Voltorb is it's essentially just a sphere. There's nothing to it. It looks like a Pokeball, which is just a sphere.
It's an angry Pokeball.
Yeah. And then Electrode, its evolution, it's like a goofier one.
That's 3 times the size.
Okay, so that one's even much bigger. Cause
it's like a yoga ball.
Because in the video game, it essentially sometimes it looks like an item you find on the ground. So it's a little bit tricky. So it would have to go by the Pokedex rules, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got an idea. I'm looking for a list of the first 150 Pokemon, and I want to pick a couple at random, and through 1 to 10, I'd like for you to rate the feasibility of you building one of these Pokemon. Does that sound like fun?
Gotcha. Oh yeah.
Okay, so first we're gonna go with my original starter Pokemon. So, Blastoise. What do you think is the feasibility?
Too big.
Too big, huh? I don't actually know the
Yeah.
size. I don't got the sizes in front of me.
Someone that I follow on TikTok actually built one, and it fits in a truck bed.
Oh my god, that's huge. So Blastoise it's a blue turtle with water cannons coming off its shoulders. If you're wondering at home.
That's about 4.5 feet tall.
Okay. So how about a Rattata?
You know, there's really no good motions I can get out of that short of just making the tail move. I did a poll when I got my 3D filament sponsor about what I would use the filament on. Rattata was one of the options, and it placed about middle. I had intended on just making a taxidermy of it.
Okay. Do you want to shout out your filament sponsor? They're not a sponsor of this show, but I mean, they're helping you out, so I'm good with you promoting them.
It's Polymaker 3D.
Oh, Polymaker is a phenomenal company.
No, they love what I'm doing, and they're all in for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. They do support quite a few makers, so I really like supporting companies that support makers. So you hear that at home? You know, support companies that support the makers, essentially.
Because I'll say this, Kabuto wouldn't have happened if they hadn't came on board.
Yeah, because that's a lot of filament. Are you an iterative designer? Like, do you have to try things over and over until they work, or do you kind of work with what you got?
Kind of both. I know Kabuto ended up I ordered a 5 kilogram roll of filament, and it used probably around 3 of it. So none of the prints screwed up, which was fantastic. I didn't have to redo any of them. Sometimes I'll realize something's not going to clear right, and I'll just take a Dremel or a soldering iron to the end product just to make clearance. But that's on me using a program that's like 8 years old and is not provided anymore by Microsoft.
Yeah, very true. I feel your pain about Blender, because I've tried to get Blender to work. It just doesn't work with the way my brain functions.
I learned 3D print modeling using Tinkercad. That's all I really know, and I know it just enough to get in trouble.
Yeah, it's a great piece of software, though, because it lets you work with primitives. So for those listening at home, it just means you can drag like a shape onto the platform.
The only problem I had with it was with Kabuto, the amount of polygons in there were just outrageous, and it just could not do it. So I had to make all my edits in my other program.
Fair enough. And that would be like the Windows 3D something?
3D Builder.
Yeah. I think you can still get it, but who knows for how long, and you have to directly search for it in the Microsoft Store.
Oh, I tried that. It's gone.
Oh, it's gone. Oh, damn.
You have to download like the APK pack or something.
Oh, that's not...
And I tried that, and it just didn't work.
That's horrible.
I'm trying to keep this computer going as long as I can.
Yeah, no kidding. The other thing you can try is that FreeCAD just had their 1.0 release, which made it a lot easier to work with. So that might be an idea for you if you're looking for a replacement.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. What about an Abra, which is essentially, I don't know, is it like it's like a psychic raccoon? I really don't know what it is.
It's like a garden vole or something like that.
Yeah, that would make sense.
It's actually like 3.5 feet tall, and it sits there and teleports in the game.
Yeah.
There's really no movement out of it. Plus, taking it to a convention, unless I have like a wagon or something, there's really no point.
It's too big. Okay. Understood. Magnemite.
I've been thinking about that a lot here lately.
Because Magnemite it's like a sphere, and it has 2 horseshoe magnets, one on each side. And the magnets, they're kind of detached from the body, but I mean, you can fake that, and they spin typically.
Yeah, they spin, and I'd actually been thinking I could use a method similar to Zubat, except use wider tubing to support the more weight.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
and I can actually fit a battery and receiver in that. I can make the body spin on the acrylic tube, but I can also make the magnet spin.
yeah, that'd be phenomenal. And then for cosplay reasons, you can plug your other Pokemon into Magnemite for power because that sounds about accurate to the game.
Yeah.
All right, what about something like Shelder? It seems like Shelder, you could probably knock that out in under a week.
Shelder was one of the 6 in that poll. I was hoping it won because I thought I was going to do another tentacle mechanism for the tongue. Out of all the votes that came in the comment section, not one person picked it.
Wow. Shelder it's essentially, it's like an oyster. It's like a bivalve, but I forgot, it does have a tongue sticking
It
out.
has the same thing as Kabuto, where the main body is a black sphere.
Yeah. Yeah. And that gets more obvious in its evolution. Cloyster, where I think the black sphere is essentially supposed to be a pearl.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a tough one for you. Ghastly.
That was one of the first ones I thought about. Then I realized that they're 6 foot tall.
They're 6 foot tall. Oh my God.
They're huge.
So Ghastly it's a ghost, but it's hard to describe. It's like a round.
It's also it's a big black sphere with purple flames around it.
Yeah, but like the flames are like intangible. It's like smoky, weird stuff.
It's like I can make some fog machines to put in there that run off of a battery, but yeah, no, my bad. It's 4'3".
Okay, that's still huge.
For something that's supposed to hover, the logistics of supporting that don't exist.
Okay, how about arguably the cutest Pokemon ever in existence, Cubone?
I actually 3D printed a taxidermy of one of those before I did Pidgey, and I can make the head move, I can make the arm swing, but that's about it. It would have better chances than everything else so far.
So Cubone is, I don't even really know how to describe it, but it kind of has a horse's almost skull over its head. And
it looks like Charmander, but it's got a skull on its head.
Yeah.
And it carries a bone.
Yeah, there we go. And I think lore-wise, the helmet is supposed to be its dead mother's head.
Yeah, there's a lot of old Pokedex entries that don't make sense once you look too hard at them.
Yeah. So, in fact, it's probably one of the most iconic Pokemon that you'll find on 3D printing sites because people have made those helmets for like every size. Like some people have corgi helmets they make out of them. So, okay. So I do have a suggestion though. If you can ever end up making a Cubone, your water pump thing you were looking into, if you can make the eyes close and make it cry, you're going to melt hearts. I promise.
And cause trauma, probably.
Yeah. My wife would probably be traumatized for sure.
Like the whole causing trauma thing is why I shelved an idea for a Hypno animatronic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I was going to make it to where the head moved, but he was strapped to a hand truck like Hannibal Lecter.
Nice one.
Like he was being detained and taken to jail.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
For your smoke machine idea, because you're saying you can use a smoke machine, perhaps like a coughing on a clear PVC pipe, like just hanging out in your display somewhere, and then just have a smoke machine fire smoke out of the out of the ports or whatever.
I've thought about that, but just going in crowds with that would just cause all kinds of chaos.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
Like, unless I was physically holding it, I don't see that being reasonable.
All right. I guess for the ultimate challenge now, how about a Ditto where it's a fully soft robot?
I've brainstormed on this. I kind of played around and started designing an internal structure that was just riddled with servos for arm movements and stuff with the intent of 3D printing the actual body and making a silicone cast of it
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Silicone casting.
that would then go over the armature to where it can move its little arms and stuff and just have that rubber look to it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And lastly, what about a splashing Magikarp?
I thought about that, and then I saw how large those things are.
Oh, is it big too? Oh, dang.
Oh yeah, it's large.
Let me check. Well, carp are okay. It's 89 centimeters. It probably means nothing to you. Just
Yeah,
under
almost.
3 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, real carp are huge though. There are there are some here where I live in the rivers, and they get like 40 pounds plus easily.
Oh yeah.
Huge. Well, all right. That indulged my childhood wonder. So, what's the next thing? Where are we going next? So, I do love that you're like this Viridian Forest cosplayer as like the ranger. Are we going to see more bug type Pokemon, or are you going in a different direction?
Well, I've got patches for other things from Kanto. Like I've got Safari Zone patches, Cinnabar Island Dive Team patches. I can adjust the look for whatever I want to run. I have thought about building a Beedrill.
How big are those?
They're like 3 feet, but most of that is leg and wings.
Yeah, I see that. So Beedrill is essentially it's a wasp, but
Yeah.
but it has two legs and two arms, and the arms have drills on them. That's what they're a bee drill, essentially.
And the thought was that I can make a mount that goes into the small of my back that pokes out that the Beedrill would just slot onto to where it looks like it's behind me.
Okay. It would just essentially be hovering behind you. That would be the idea.
Yeah.
I guess you could
With
also attach it by the stinger and just have it just be like, okay, nobody panic. I need medic.
Yeah, like I figured that I could get arm movement out of that and I can get side to side head movement.
Are you going to make the drill spin?
It's a possibility. I can get rotational servos and not print the drills, but get styrofoam cones and put coatings on them to where it's not obviously styrofoam, to where it's as light as it can possibly be.
Have you worked with the foam board, like from the dollar store?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Because that immediately comes to me as a lightweight material. And since you were trying to do RC planes a little bit, do you know about flight test at all?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's where I got the thought of the foam board, because they build, for those listening at home, they build full RC airplanes using just foam board and hot glue and then servos and receivers.
There was a time that I kept whole boxes of that Ready board in my workshop.
Oh, there we
Because
go.
it's easy to prototype.
Oh, for sure. 100%. So the Beedrill is probably your next project, or you haven't settled yet?
Well, for the rest of this year, my printer is probably going to be occupied making Christmas gifts. I'm going to a local convention the first weekend of February, so I'd like to have another animatronic done by then. But I'm also going to a very large convention Labor Day weekend where thousands of people are at in Georgia, and it's 5 days long, and I want a different Pokemon each day. So Beedrill's on the table, Dodrio's on the table. I've got plans to eventually do an Execute.
Also a big Pokemon, I think.
Well, it can be managed. The idea that I've got is getting a large basket and making a frame to mount all the eggs on, but modeling ball joints on the bottom of them to where they click into the socket and they have control arms for the servos to make them go weird directions, and then just hide the electronics with hay or something like that.
That'd be brilliant. So, Execute is, it's not that big actually. It says,
Yeah, it's like 7 eggs.
yeah, it's like 1 foot in height. So they'd be like ostrich eggs,
Yeah.
essentially. That's not too bad. And then then you just have a little bit of movement on them, and you're set.
And with a ball joint instead of a hinge, there there's a lot more variable in the direction they can go.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's a lot more. I guess when you said execute, like I know what execute is, but I guess in my head I was thinking executor, which
Yeah.
is a coconut tree for those listening at home. It's a little
Yeah.
bit bigger. Executor is 6'7" in height. That's a big boy.
Oh yeah.
All right, we're getting to the point of the podcast where I ask pretty much all my guests the exact same question. Are you ready for me to ask it to you?
Sure.
All right, so imagine you get a grant, so essentially unlimited money to start the business of your dreams. It doesn't have to be profitable because you're getting a grant, but it does have to provide a service or a product. What kind of business would you start?
Let's see. I would invest in a lot of 3D printers and just in this perfect world hash out a agreement with Nintendo to where I can have they can support the dumb videos I make on TikTok where I'm in character interacting with the animatronics.
I mean, that sounds like a great goal. It sounds like you're heading towards there already.
Like I used to make videos in character where I would add animated game sprites in, and here recently as I make animatronics, I replace those sprites with the actual animatronics, and it looks so much better and like something you'd actually see like on an educational channel on Saturday morning.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Have you reached
That's my main worry doing all this is I want to stay in Nintendo's good graces because I really love doing this.
Yeah, that makes sense. You gotta walk the line and make sure you don't jump into profitability. Like if you
People
started
ask me if I'll sell them. No, you can do the Patreon and I'll give you files, but I'm not selling you animatronics.
exactly, that's the way to do it, because Adam Savage has said multiple times that the big IP owners, they have a good sense of when someone crosses the line into running it like a business, and that's when it's all over for you.
Yeah, I'm not even doing these videos trying to make money off of it. If I can get some filament or a couple 3D printer sponsors out of it, that's fine. I do it for the looks that I get out of other 90s kids at these conventions that for 5-10 seconds of interacting with it, they're 8 years old again and all their problems are gone.
Have you reached out to 3D printer companies to see if they would send you another machine?
I've filled out an affiliate form for Ender. I haven't heard back on it. Finding those are a lot more difficult than finding filament sponsors. Polymaker made it easy. They had a form I could submit, and they emailed me a couple days later and talked. I'm having trouble finding a 3D printer company that'll help out.
I've got a couple connections. We'll talk offline about people you can reach out to, because I do know some some companies that are very eager to have their products used for end stuff like you do. So
Yeah,
we'll talk offline.
perfect.
So for the listeners that have been listening to your story and they're pretty happy about what they've heard, do you have anywhere specific, like do you have a specific video or something you want to point them to so they can get the visuals to go along with the podcast? Like maybe the video you're most proud of or something like that?
Well, the video I'm most proud of, I think I put it on YouTube and also TikTok, was this past May. I went to a local event, a local Comic-Con at a library, and entered the cosplay contest, not expecting anything. Ended up getting a trophy from it, and that is one of the videos I've got with the most views, most comments, and it really reaffirmed what I'm doing.
So let me try to find it here on YouTube. It would be a shorts, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I am now an award-winning cosplayer. Is that the one?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
There we go. Okay, I'm gonna
A
put
lot of
that.
times I make like 3 versions of it because I don't think it's doing like it should.
Makes sense.
I want to use YouTube a lot more than I do, but I just can't get the interactions with people in the comments that I get on TikTok.
Yeah, so I've said this a lot. I don't know how TikTok works, but with YouTube, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you get. And so some people get way more than what they deserve, but most people get way less. So it just is what it is. On YouTube, it's really a numbers game. You have to post lots of videos, and eventually, when one of your videos gets recognized, you'll go, semi-viral, and then all the people flooding in will check out your other videos you've posted, and they'd be like, how come I've never heard of you before? This is right up my alley.
I
That
actually had a comment like that come in yesterday and basically saying on the Kabuto video, I don't know how I haven't found this before or how I got here, but I'm glad I'm here.
Yep, that is exactly how YouTube works. It picks its winners, and that's that's about it. So you really have to kind of spread your wings. I'm really glad you came onto the podcast so I can introduce you to some introduce some audience to you, and vice versa. And I mean,
That's something about me is I just like talking shop with people. I'll happily sit in a convention just talking how I did something or what my thought process was to people that are curious about it. Because I got inspired by someone else's video, and look what's come from that. I want to see the same thing happen with someone else.
and that's such a noble goal. I would say an easy video to knock out for YouTube would be to grab like your maybe top 10 most asked questions and just make like a 6 minute frequently asked questions video. That's a good
Yeah,
introduction to you
and
and all the stuff you do.
I actually did a live stream on TikTok the other day where I was doing stuff like that, and I can actually chop that up into a completely different video.
Yeah, there you go. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where you just have to post video, 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 keep going, keep going, keep going. And, you could try on the long form side and try on the short form side
I
until
found
something
that I do
sticks.
better on the shorts.
Yeah, you seem to have more or less mastered that format as far as I can see. You're very punchy to the point, really interesting, and the stuff that you show is really cool. But do consider like maybe showing the whole insides of your Pidgey, how you built it or whatever in one story, a
Yeah,
15-20 minute video as well, because you'll capture a different audience. The shorts audiences aren't really shared with the long form audiences.
yeah, and once all the builds are finished, I usually go back and make compilation videos of all the progress videos and everything associated with it.
Yeah, and I honestly hope that you do find your audience, because I have to say I was really impressed before I started talking to you, but just knowing how little experience you had in the field when you started, and you started not that long ago, you've achieved quite a bit. So I'm thoroughly impressed.
I think the funniest thing I've done with them so far is before I took Pidgey to an actual Comic-Con, I went to my city's botanical gardens on a Pokemon Go community day and just walked around with him and was just seeing how people reacted, and it really solidified what I was doing
Yeah, absolutely.
because people were spotting it at 20 meters away, just knowing exactly what it was, and then just running up to it.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. I mean, it looks just like what you would think it looks like, but it's more difficult than that, because in the game it has a smooth texture. In the anime, it's drawn, it has a smooth texture, and having a Pidgey with feathers isn't obvious, right? But you've made it
I
work.
had a handful of people that day because the zoo is across the road from the botanical gardens. A handful of people thought I was walking around with an owl.
Yeah, it's about the right size, and it's sitting on
And
the
they
glove.
didn't realize it until they were right up on it that it was fake.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. The only thing that gives it away really is the anime style eyes, right? Because it's got
Yeah.
really big eyes, but you got to get in kind of close to see that.
Yeah, and with the new version, I've definitely done a better job at hiding the gaps between the pieces and using feathers to hide all that.
Yeah, and like I said, I hope people go and watch your videos because it is very impressive. You made a Thanksgiving video. Is the Pidgey eating bird? I hope not.
No, it's looking at me eating a bird and it's having a meltdown about it.
Oh, gotcha. I love the comedic touches too. And you know
I've
what?
got
Your
I've got the
comedic
Thanksgiving video with him, and I've got one of him wearing a Santa hat that I made him.
gotcha. I appreciate your comedic timing too because you've got the zoom ins for dramatic effect too. It looks good.
Yeah.
So you've got a little bit of an audience here. Is there any closing words you'd like to tell the people listening at home?
Um, Try something that interests you. You're gonna fail. You're gonna fail a lot. Eventually, you'll stop failing as much, and you'll be able to see the progress you're making compared to when you started. And you just go upward from there and listen to critiques, criticisms, take them in, and use them.
Wise words to live by. Alan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, taking time out of your schedule, and especially on Thanksgiving, which I accidentally scheduled you for. So sorry again
Oh,
about that.
it's all good. We eat early in the day, but yeah, I've got a TikTok account, YouTube, Instagram, all Officer Granite. I'm actually on a podcast with my friends called Socially Unacceptable, so we get about 2 viewers every episode, so it's popping. Um,
I was there not
yeah,
that long ago, man.
I'm happy to be here.
And for those of you listening, I really do want you to go check out Alan's stuff, Officer Granite, on pretty much all the platforms. All the links will be in the description below. But if you do go watch one of his TikToks or his YouTube videos or listen to his podcast, I would like for you to leave a comment as well, because creators of all types, small ones especially, love getting comments from you guys. So please go ahead and watch a video. I guarantee you'll love it, but then leave a comment, please. And so that's it. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And honestly, I wasn't blowing smoke up your butt. If you want help with anything microcontroller related, LED related, feel free to reach out. I just want your projects to reach that next level, which is crazy to say because they're pretty incredible already.
I'll absolutely do it because I want them to get more and more complex as I go.
Sounds great. All right. Catch you guys on the next one.